The ice in her water glass had melted into jagged slivers that clicked when she nudged the straw. Candlelight warmed the white tablecloth, but it didn't soften Vivian Lopez's posture. Back straight chin, lifted like she refused to give the room an inch. Her composure was perfect. Her hand wasn't. Her fingers were clamped on the napkin so hard her knuckles went pale, the linen wrinkling under the pressure. I was still wearing my gray t-shirt, still smelling like sawdust and cedar oil from a long day of corrections at a renovation 3 blocks away. I should have been in my truck heading home. Instead, I was watching my ex's mom sit alone at a two-top like she was waiting for a verdict. The front door opened. Cold air rolled in. A man in a cheap suit stepped inside and scanned the room. He found Vivian and walked fast, too fast, like he didn't want her to remember she could leave. "Vivian," he said, smile stretched. She stood. She didn't hug him. She offered her hand, formal controlled. "Philip," she replied. My stomach went cold. "Philip Monroe, developer. The type of man who called pressure negotiation, then acted offended when you didn't thank him for it." He sat. Vivian didn't sit until he did. Philip slid a thick folder across the table. "Let's keep it simple. You sell me the Ashland building tonight. We sign. I make your headaches disappear." Vivian's thumb rubbed the seam of her purse, small, repetitive. "Not panic. Focus." "I'm not selling," she said. Philip's smile stayed glued on. "Then you're choosing the hard way. I'm choosing my way." Philip leaned closer, voice dropping. "Permits, liens, missing deliveries, delays. It's not personal." Vivian smiled without warmth. "You don't chase people this hard unless you want something they won't give you." Philip's eyes sharpened. Then he noticed me. "Bradley," he said, surprised. "Small world." I left the bar and walked over. Boots loud, heart steady. I didn't look at Philip. I looked at Vivian, at the controlled face, at the white knuckles. "Does he even know what makes you happy?" I asked her, quiet and sharp. Vivian's eyes narrowed a fraction, warning, and then steadied. "This isn't the place Philip said." Vivian set the napkin down slowly, like she was setting down a blade. "This is exactly the place she said. Because you like witnesses." Philip forced a laugh. "Fine. Witnesses. Here's the deal." He tapped the folder. The header, "Visible Notice of Leon." Vivian didn't touch it. I flipped it open enough to see the numbers, then closed it. Vivian stood. "We're done." Philip's grin turned ugly. "Not even a counteroffer. I'll see you in court," she said. Philip's eyes gleamed. "You'll see me before that." Vivian walked out. I followed. Outside, rain misted the streetlights. Vivian stopped under a lamp and exhaled like she'd been holding her breath since dinner started. "You shouldn't have done that," she said. "I couldn't watch him corner you." "He wasn't cornering me," Vivian replied, eyes hard. "He was checking if I'd fold." And I didn't. A beat. Then softer, "Thank you." The restaurant door opened again. A man stepped out, older silver hairsuit that fit eyes like he'd read 1,000 contracts and never been impressed. Saul Feldman. He joined us without drama. "Philip approached you here?" "Yes," Vivian said. Saul's jaw flexed. "All right, we pivot." Vivian turned to me. "Bradley, I need you on site at 7. And I need the truth every time, even when it's ugly. You'll get it." Saul added, "And I need documentation. Photos, timestamps, receipts. If something feels off, don't assume it's a mistake." Vivian's gaze stayed forward. "Philip watches everything I do." I nodded once. Then we stopped giving him fog. Ashland smelled like old brick and wet wood. The building had good bones, but the work inside was a disaster. Warped studs, sketchy stair framing, cheap fasteners where structural hardware should have been. The kind of mess that didn't happen by accident. Vivienne was there early in black jeans and boots plans rolled under one arm. Sandalwood perfume cut clean through the dust. I walked her through the first floor and pointed at the failures. That header isn't bearing. Those studs aren't anchored. And whoever ran that electrical should be banned from holding a screwdriver. Vivienne didn't argue. She asked the right questions. Fastest way to stabilize the second floor bay temporary shoring, I said. Support wall adjustable steel posts, load off the span until we replace the beam. Do it. She flipped to her expense notes. Invoices don't match deliveries. Hardware, treated lumber, structural ties. My jaw tightened. That's not sloppy. That's theft. Vivienne's eyes stayed calm. I suspected. That's why I started watching. I crouched at the building's security conduit and ran my fingers along the cable run. Clean cut. Not weather. Not rodents. A blade. I looked up. Your cameras are dead. Vivienne didn't flinch. Philip had them cut before you came on the job. Then how do we prove anything, I asked. Vivienne opened her tote and pulled out a small camo-case device. A trail camera, battery-powered, motion-activated, the kind hunters strap to trees. My brows lifted. Vivienne's gaze held mine. I installed it behind the freight elevator, corner blind spot. I didn't tell Saul yet. Strategist. I gave a slow nod. Good. Keep it quiet. We worked all morning, laser-level lines, moisture meter checks, shoring, built square posts, tightened brace plates, set everything documented with photos and timestamps. At noon, Vivienne set 2 pizza boxes on a plank over sawhorses. Half jalapeno, she said, half anchovies. I blinked. That's aggressive. It's efficient, she deadpanned. We both eat. We ate standing in sawdust and sunlight, the building slowly turning from chaos into structure. By the end of the week, progress had a rhythm. Vivienne brought coffee black for me, oat milk for herself. The oat milk started showing up in my truck cooler without either of us commenting. Objects began to stack into routine instead of speeches. Her lipstick in my cup holder, a spare pair of gloves on my dash, a roll of painter's tape in her tote because she'd seen my crew run out. Late one night, I stayed to set a door latch so it clicked clean. A sharp sting hit my palm. Splinter, I muttered. Vivienne looked up instantly. Sit, I'm fine. Her tone didn't rise, but it pinned me. Bradley. I sat on the workbench. Vivienne opened a small metal case, tweezers and antiseptic. Architect kit, I asked. Model making, she replied. Balsa wood is brutal. She turned my hand palm up, leaned in and pinched the splinter free with a quick, precise tug. Then she dabbed antiseptic, careful, thorough. Done, she said. Thank you. She didn't let go immediately. Her thumb brushed my palm, once brief grounding. Then she stepped back like she'd reset a boundary. We pull the trail camera footage, she said, steady. Tonight, we waited until the building was empty. Vivienne retrieved the trail camera from the corner behind the freight elevator and slid the card into her laptop. Clips filled the screen. Nighttime triggers, movement. Then Philip. Not a worker, not a messenger. Philip himself, cap-low coat up, walking straight to our shoring wall like he knew exactly where the weak point was. He unscrewed a brace plate and slid it into his pocket. Then he stepped back and smiled. Not big. Just a crooked half lift of the mouth like a man who'd just flipped a winning card. Vivienne's voice went thin. He's trying to make your work fail. He's trying to make someone get hurt, I said. Vivienne clicked to another clip, a man swapping structural screws for shorter ones, while Philip watched hands in pockets. Vivienne sat back slowly. He'll call it fake. Then we stack proof, I said. Supply chain. Vivienne's eyes sharpened. The warehouse. I nodded, And Saul doesn't let us walk in as strangers. Vivian picked up her phone. I'm calling Saul. Saul arrived the next morning already on a call. He ended it and looked at us. I have a friend at Monroe Supply, he said. Night manager. He owes me. Vivienne handed Saul the trail footage on a drive. Saul watched in silence. When Philip's smirk appeared on screen, Saul's jaw flexed. Good, he said. Strong. Now we make it undeniable. Monroe Supply smelled like diesel and cardboard. Forklifts beeped, fluorescents buzzed. A man in a black polo stepped out when he saw Saul. Mr. Feldman, he said, instantly respectful. Eddie, Saul replied. We need loading bay footage. Last 3 weeks, after hours, and access logs, under your credentials. Eddie hesitated. That's sensitive. Saul's tone stayed even. You're about to be subpoenaed. I'm giving you the chance to be on the right side before corporate makes you the scapegoat. Eddie swallowed. Come on. He led us into a security office with monitors and a desktop. He logged in with his own account, no shortcuts, no guest nonsense. He pulled the timeline. There was Philip's SUV rolling into Bay 3 at 11:47 p.m. Philip stepping out. A worker handing him a box. Badge swipe on the screen, timestamp, door log. Saul pointed. Print, export, and highlight the access entry. Eddie did prints exported, clip access, log entry saved. Saul slid a card across the desk. If anyone pressures you, call me. Eddie pocketed it like a lifeline. We walked out with a chain trail camera footage, warehouse, CCTV access logs, stills, timestamps. Vivian exhaled in the parking lot finally. Thank you. Saul's eyes stayed hard. Now we set the trap. We didn't go straight from proof to victory. Philip fought back the only way men like him knew: paperwork and pressure. 2 days after Monroe Supply, a city truck rolled up to Ashland while my crew was unloading lumber. A safety inspector stepped out with a clipboard and a look that said he'd already decided what he wanted to find. Vivian arrived at the same time, heels swapped for boots, hair tied back tight. She took one look at the inspector's badge and leaned toward me. He's not our usual contact, she murmured. I kept my voice calm. Then we treat him like a stranger with power. The inspector introduced himself and immediately started pointing electrical rough-ins, temporary supports, dust control. Stop work order is on the table if I see violations, he said. My apprentice stiffened. My foreman muttered under his breath. I held up a hand, silent command. Stoic. Understood, I said. Walk with me. I led the inspector through the site like I was giving a tour, not begging for mercy. I showed him the permits taped to the wall in plastic sleeves. I showed him the load ratings on the adjustable steel posts. I showed him the temporary shoring wall with stamped lumber and correct fasteners, every plate numbered, every screw count documented. Vivienne stayed 2 steps behind phone, out not filming faces, filming evidence, the posted permits, the inspector's clipboard, the timestamp on her lock screen. Strategy in plain sight. The inspector stopped at the second-floor bay and tried to frown at the shoring. Who designed this support, he asked. I did, I replied, based on the engineer's recommendations. I can pull the engineer's letter if you want it. He blinked. You have an engineer letter? I nodded once. Because we don't guess with load. Vivian's voice cut in calm. We can email it while you're here. The inspector's eyes flicked to her, assessing. Then he softened just a fraction. All right, show me dust mitigation. I walked him to the corner where we'd hung plastic sheeting and set a box fan with a filter. Negative pressure setup, I said. Keeps dust from migrating. He checked it. He checked our fire extinguisher. He checked our first aid station. Then he looked annoyed that he couldn't find a crack in us. At the front door, he paused and said, You've been reported. Multiple times. Vivian didn't flinch. By who? The inspector hesitated. Anonymous. I nodded as if that was exactly what I expected. Let me guess. The report started after we replaced the original contractor. The inspector didn't answer. His silence did. Vivian's voice stayed even. If you get another report, call my attorney directly. Saul Feldman. The inspector's eyebrows jumped at the name. He handed Vivian a slip. No stop work, but keep your documentation tight. We will, I said. When he drove off, my foreman exhaled like he'd been holding his lungs hostage. Vivian turned to me. That was Philip. Yeah, I said. He's trying to drain you with friction. Vivian's mouth tightened. Then we out-document him. That afternoon, she proved she wasn't just a client writing checks. She walked the site with a punch list and a label maker. She made me slow down while she photographed serial numbers on hardware boxes, delivery tags on treated lumber, and the stamped grade marks on every structural piece. What are you doing? My apprentice asked, confused. Vivienne didn't look up. Building a timeline. I watched her work, precise, relentless quiet, and felt something settle in my chest. Respect, not pity, not rescue. Respect. Philip tried a different angle the next day. A man I didn't recognize showed up in a clean hoodie and expensive boots, leaning against the doorway like he belonged there. He glanced at Vivian, then at me, and smiled without warmth. Bradley Wright, he said. Name's Carter. I work with Philip. I didn't shake his hand. I didn't step back either. What do you want? I asked. Carter shrugged. Just here to make sure the work is up to standard. Vivienne's gaze turned sharp. You're not an inspector. Carter's eyes stayed on her a beat too long. No, but I'm paid to notice things. My jaw tightened. I took one step forward, not aggressive, just enough to block his line of sight, to Vivienne. Calm authority. You notice this, I said. You're trespassing. You leave now, or I call the police and file a report. Carter laughed. You think cops care about a renovation site? Vivienne's voice stayed steady. Cops care about a man who keeps showing up where he isn't welcome. Carter's smile thinned. He looked at me again, weighing. Then he backed off with a lazy shrug. Fine. But tell Vivienne to read her mail. He walked away. Vivienne's fingers tightened around her clipboard. He's pushing. He wants you reactive, I said. Vivienne lifted her chin. Then we stay quiet and lethal. I glanced at her. Lethal. She gave the faintest smile. Legally. That night, Saul called. Philip filed a second lien notice, he said. It's garbage, but it's meant to scare your lender. Vivienne's voice was calm. What do we do? Saul answered like a man who never panicked. We do what you've been doing. We show proof. We remove ambiguity. We keep you out of private confrontations. Vivienne's gaze flicked to me. No private confrontations. I nodded. Agreed. Saul continued. If Philip corners you again, you call me. If he corners you on site, Bradley calls the police and gets a report number. We're stacking real-world barriers so no one can ask, why didn't you just leave? We're making leaving a documented action. Vivienne exhaled. Understood. After the call, Vivienne stayed on site late. She sat on an upside-down bucket while I measured a stair stringer. You're not obligated to be here, I told her. Vivienne didn't look up from her notes. I'm not obligated. I'm invested. A pause. Then she added softer. Philip keeps trying to make me feel like this building is a mistake. Like I'm foolish for wanting something that's mine. I kept my hands on the tape voice even. He's scared. Vivienne finally looked up. Of what of you, I said. When you're not tired. Vivienne's eyes held mine a beat too long. The air shifted, quiet, charged. I set the tape down slowly, careful with the moment like it was a sharp tool. Vivian's voice went low. "Bradley, why are you doing this?" The question wasn't about shoring walls. I met her gaze. "Because he doesn't get to rewrite your reality. And because I don't like men who win by breaking things." Vivian's throat worked. She nodded once, accepting it. Then, because she was Vivian, she got practical. "Tomorrow," she said, "we replace the compromised joist line before the weather turns again." I gave a small, controlled smile. "Yes, ma'am." Her brows lifted. "Don't call me that." And the tension didn't disappear. It just sharpened into something usable. The storm hit 2 nights later. Wind first low and relentless, then rain in sheets that hammered the brick like fists. The kind of storm that didn't care about your plans. My phone buzzed. Ashland. Now. Something's wrong. I was in my truck before the second ring. Vivian stood under the awning when I pulled up coat, pulled tight hair damp. Her face was pale but controlled. "The second floor bay," she said. I heard a crack. I grabbed my headlamp and ran inside. The building groaned under the wind. Rain rattled the tall windows. Every gust made the old beams complain. On the second floor, my light hit the shoring wall. A brace plate was missing. One steel post leaned just enough to make my teeth itch. Back, I snapped. Vivian stepped away, but she didn't run. She planted near the stairwell, phone in hand, ready. I dropped to my knees, braced the post with my shoulder, and shoved a wedge under the base. My fingers found hardware by feel spares I'd insisted on ordering. The storm slammed the windows again. A sharp crack snapped overhead, wood flexing under stress. "Can you fix it?" Vivian asked, voice tight. "I'm fixing it," I said, and drove the screws in fast, wrist burning. "Light," I barked. Vivian was there instantly, holding the beam of her phone exactly where I needed it. No shaking, no panic. I tightened the last screw until it bit. Then I eased my shoulder away. The post held. The wall stayed square. I exhaled hard. "You just saved my building," Vivian whispered. "No," I said. "We did." A slam echoed from below like a door thrown open. Footsteps, fast. Vivian's eyes flicked to mine. Someone's inside. I moved first, stepping in front of her without thinking, body forming a shield. My headlamp cut down the stairwell. A figure climbed, hood up, coat dark, moving like he knew the layout. Philip. He looked up and froze when he saw us. Then his mouth curled, hands sliding into his pockets, like he'd walked into his own victory lap. "Vivian," he called over the storm. "You really shouldn't be here." Vivian's spine went iron. "Neither should you." Philip's gaze slid to me. "Still playing hero, Bradley?" "You cut the shoring," I said. Philip shrugged. "Old buildings, accidents." Vivian's voice snapped. "You're on camera." Philip's smile paused, just a breath. Then he recovered. "What camera?" Vivian didn't answer. She just raised her phone, eyes steady. Philip's gaze flicked to it too quick. "Go home," he said smoothly. "Sign tomorrow. Save yourself." Vivian stepped forward half a pace. "Selling now isn't peace, Philip. It's letting you win." Philip's jaw twitched. "You think you can beat me with lines like that?" "No," Vivian said, grounded. "I beat you with proof." Philip's eyes hardened. Then he turned and bolted. I chased boots slipping on wet steps, but he hit the first floor fast and slammed a door into the storm. His SUV roared. Tires spun. Tail lights vanished into rain. I stood in the doorway, chest heaving, soaked through. Vivian came up behind me and touched my arm. "Are you hurt?" I looked down, scraped knuckles, blood mixing with rain. "It's nothing." Vivian's gaze held mine. "Don't lie to me." "It's a scrape," I admitted. She nodded once, satisfied. Then she stepped close enough that the storm noise felt far away. "Tell me to stop," she said, voice barely above the rain. "Consent. Clear. Mutual." "I won't," I said. Vivienne rose on her toes and kissed me hard, honest collision level, like the storm had stripped away every excuse. Her hands gripped my shirt at the waist. Mine held her back steady, protective, not wandering. She kissed back like she owned the choice. When she pulled away, her eyes were clear. "That doesn't change the facts," she said, breath unsteady. "No," I replied. "It changes the stakes." "Good," Vivienne said. The next morning, Saul called an emergency meeting at the bank that held Vivienne's renovation loan. Plain room, harsh lighting, no drama, just people who cared about numbers and liability. The bank rep, 2 city inspectors, Saul, Vivienne, me. And because Saul knew Philip, couldn't resist the chance to gloat, Philip. Philip walked in 10 minutes late, suit perfect, smile practiced. He saw Vivienne and me sitting side by side, and his eyes tightened for half a second. Then he smoothed it away. Saul stood. "We're here because the delays and cost spikes at Ashland were not mismanagement. They were interference." Philip laughed. "Come on." Saul clicked a remote. The screen lit up. Trail camera footage, Philip entering Ashland after hours, removing brace hardware, pocketing it, smiling like a man who thought he was untouchable. Silence dropped. Philip leaned forward. "That's fake." Saul didn't blink. Battery-powered trail camera installed by Vivienne after a contractor disappeared. No building network to tamper with. Vivienne's voice was calm. "Because you recommended that contractor, Philip." Saul clicked again. Warehouse CCTV, Philip's SUV at loading bay, 3 at 11:47 p.m. A worker handing him a box. Badge swipe visible. Timestamp visible. Saul held up printed stills and a highlighted access log, exported by Monroe Supply's night manager under his own credentials. Access logs corroborate. One inspector leaned in. "Structural hardware," I answered, "controlled. Brace plates and heavy-duty fasteners. Removing them during a storm warning risks collapse." Philip snapped. "You can't prove intent." Saul opened a folder and slid printed screenshots across the table, messages from a burner number to the previous contractor, a payment transfer, and a line that made the room turn colder. "Make it look like his work fails." Philip's face drained. The bank rep's voice went flat. "Mr. Monroe, you're done here." Philip stood too fast, chair scraping. His eyes locked on Vivienne. "You think you've won?" Vivienne met him without blinking. "I think you finally lost." Philip's gaze flicked to me, disgusted. "This is what you chose, a contractor." Vivienne answered instantly. "I chose the man who builds, not the man who takes." Philip's mouth twisted. He stormed out. Saul didn't preach. He didn't celebrate. He simply said, "We file the injunction today. Inspectors, you have everything you need." They nodded. Vivienne's shoulders lowered for the first time in weeks. Under the table, her hand found mine, light, steady. I squeezed once. She squeezed back. Philip didn't vanish overnight, but his leverage did. Ashland kept standing. We rebuilt what he'd tried to weaken, replaced damaged members, corrected framing, documented every step. Vivienne stayed close, not hovering, not helpless. Present, strategic. One afternoon, she climbed down from a ladder, sawdust on her sleeve, and looked at me with a faint smirk. "You're not simple," she said. "Is that a complaint?" "No," she replied. I used to think simple was the goal. Now I want clear. I want solid. I want the kind of life you can lean your weight on. I stepped closer. "Tell me to stop," I said, giving her the same door she'd given me. Vivienne shook her head once. I kissed her slower than the storm, more deliberate, a promise you could actually keep. When we pulled apart, she said, We still have to finish the stairwell. I laughed. Yes, Vivian. The day the inspectors signed off the structural corrections, Saul handed Vivian an envelope. Clear, he said. No liens. Injunction holds. Philip's lawyer requested time, but he's bleeding options. Vivienne scanned the paperwork and closed it like she was sealing a chapter. She looked at Saul. Thank you. Saul nodded. Then he looked at me. Good work, Bradley. I nodded once. So was yours. Saul's mouth twitched. I'll leave you too. When he walked out, sunlight filled the studio through tall windows. The building felt steady. Vivian turned to me. Do you know what makes me happy? She asked, almost teasing. I studied her face, controlled yes, but no longer clenched. The building standing, I said. Yes. Proof in your hand. Yes. Sleep, I added deadpan. Vivienne laughed real. And I said, stepping closer, someone who doesn't ask you to shrink. Vivienne's eyes held mine. Good answer. I kissed her forehead, brief, controlled, sincere. This isn't a rebound, Vivienne said. I don't do rebounds, I replied. I do builds. Vivienne's smile softened. Then build. So I did. Weeks later, we ate pizza on the studio floor because the furniture hadn't arrived yet. Jalapeno for me, anchovies for her. Her lipstick was in my truck again. My cooler had oat milk again. The routine wasn't a speech. It was proof. Vivienne leaned her head against my shoulder and exhaled. He wanted me tired, she said quietly. Afraid. I angled my body, giving her a steady wall to lean on. And you didn't give it to him. Vivienne corrected me, calm. We didn't. She kissed my jaw once, quick, controlled. Then she said, tomorrow we pick the conference table. I groaned. Please don't tell me it's another efficient decision. Vivienne's smile turned wicked. It is. I shook my head, already smiling. Because this was solid, built right. And finally ours. This story isn't just about age gaps. It's about choosing the hard truth over the easy lie and refusing to sell your piece for a bully's deal. You don't need to shrink yourself to fit into someone else's box. Notice how Bradley didn't rescue Vivienne by begging or posturing. He protected her with calm competence receipts and a plan she agreed to. Pick the person who stands beside you, who hands you the sword, instead of fighting your battles for you. If you loved seeing a couple build something real, walls, trust, and a future hit, like and subscribe for more romance stories that don't skip the hard work. See you in the next one.